Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from AnthonysCustoms, and for this review, we are looking at the Variable Action Heroes One Piece BOA Hancock figure. And this is one that I'm sure many people were excited for, mostly because boobs, but also because it's a One Piece character and everybody that has watched One Piece ever in the history of the world has liked it. That's not true, but it is a good show. Generally speaking, most people like it, and those of you that are collecting the line will be happy to have this figure. It's mostly a really good figure. It has a lot of nice details and some good features, and some things that are not so great. We're going to talk about all of it in this video, so let's go ahead and get it off the stand so that we can take a closer look. This figure stands just about 19.5 centimeters. And of course you can straighten her legs out just a little bit more to give her a little bit more height, but this is just so you guys have a general idea of how tall they are. And that makes her just shy of 7 3/4 inches tall, so she's got some pretty good height to her. A little bit thin, but that's okay. It's a very good, accurate representation of the character, I think. They did a pretty good job nailing that. And there's a lot of nice detail in this figure. If you look at the paint job for her skirt sarong thing, it's very well done. They look nice. It's nice and clean. The tampography was well executed, and that's when they print those patterns on there, and it looks really good. The skin does have some very subtle shading throughout. She is especially pale, but there is shading throughout all of her abdominal section, her cleavage, and the rest of her body, her hands and everything. So it looks good. I like it. It's nice. Hopefully it's showing up on camera. It's always hard to get a figure when it's either got white or very pale skin up against some rather dark colors like this purplish red or the hair. So hopefully it's showing up okay. I tried to adjust the camera for that, so fingers crossed it's working. Then we have the translucent plastic for her sleeves, which works nicely. The entire lower arm is translucent, but it's painted to match, and the molded plastic here with the painted plastic here matches very nicely. Same thing with the joints. It's all one color, so that's good. And then it is translucent and painted there, and you can see through it, and it looks good, so more bonuses there. Nice detail work for the little belt thing, and then all the details throughout the edges of the outfit. Very nice. And then the shading throughout this part, also very nice. They did a really good job. If there's one thing that Variable Action Heroes is good for, or I guess more accurately Mega House is good for, it's shading. They do a great job with shading. And then if you want a little bit more paint work, there's a little bit more detail work in there, but I don't think you really are supposed to be looking at that too much. But if you want to, it is in there. Okay, so let's talk about accessories before we get into the figure. We have a total of 4 faces. We have the neutral face, which comes on her in the package, the blushing face, the very angry face, and then the only kind of angry face. And they all look really nice. I think they're good likenesses for her. We do have an alternate hair piece which replaces the entire back of her head so that she can lean her head all the way back so that she can look so far down on people that she's leaning her head back. If you watch the show, you know what that means. It's pretty funny. If you don't, then I guess you should probably watch the show. We also have a total of 8 hands. We have the 2 fist hands that come on her in the package, the 2 pointing finger hands, the 2 kind of open style pose hands, and the 2 slightly more open style pose hands. We do have the energy effect part, which can be used with her hands, of course, and we have a cape, which connects to her via magnet. It just kind of sits on her back and over her shoulders, and it works surprisingly well. It does have 2 ball-pegged pieces to it, which allow it to move side to side, though you really only have the one option because when you put them together, it's a little bit too long and can just kind of fall off. But it is there, and it's nicely shaded, and it looks pretty good. It could probably be executed a little bit better, but it's not too bad. So now let's talk about articulation. The head is on a ball peg on top of the neck, and then the neck is on a ball peg on top of the torso, so it can lean around pretty well. It's not the best in the world, but it's definitely good enough, especially given the fact that she has long hair. The hair is articulated on a ball hinge that pegs into the bottom part of the top part of the hair, so it can move around a little bit, and if you wanted to, you can kind of wiggle it around to rotate it, but I'm not going to bother doing that because it's kind of a pain in the butt. And then there's a little bit of shading on the hair, just a hint of purple to give it a little bit of character, so that's pretty nice. I do wish her earrings were a separate sculpt that were connected. You can see that it's actually just sculpted onto the hair, and that doesn't look great. I might even separate that with a knife and touch it up, but it doesn't look terrible, but it doesn't look that good. Now, her shoulders are a little bit weird. They didn't do it quite the same way they do most of the Variable Action Heroes figures, in that she has a ball peg where the arm connects to the whole body, and then this is just a floating piece that kind of fills it in. So, I don't know, it's a little bit weird. The whole thing's kind of odd. Basically, don't worry about the engineering. I'll just show you the range, and that should be good enough. You can bring the arm all the way forward, at least as far as it is allowed to go based on her chest. Then you can obviously move it back, and it goes all the way up without even rotating it, so that's really good. I like that. The butterfly, or not the butterfly, the hinge, the lateral hinge. It's not a lateral hinge either. The vertical hinge works really well. It goes all the way up, and then of course you can rotate it around and pretty much do whatever you want with the arm, and you can just kind of move this piece around to get it to look good. So I like that. I think it's pretty nice, and you get your bicep swivel out of that ball hinge for the shoulder as well. So don't worry about the engineering, just know that it works really well. The elbows have a standard ball hinge, so it'll swivel at the bicep and in the forearm, and obviously you have the hinge. Now they are a little bit stiff, surprisingly, but I don't think that's a bad thing, and they look nice. You get it just a little bit better than 90 degrees, and it looks good all the way around, so that's all right. For the wrist, we just have our standard ball hinge. It's a little bit small, so you have pretty good range. You can rotate the hand around surprisingly well, so I like that. For the torso, we have a ball peg, which has especially good range, probably just because she has such a narrow torso, but you can rotate it around and lean it pretty much however you want to. You can really get her to lean back nicely for her iconic pose, and that's a good thing. Now for the hips, we start to see a little bit of a problem. You saw earlier that this is already a floating piece, so it won't get in the way. It's not going to hinder the hips at all. But what will hinder the hips is the fact that they're incredibly loose. I don't know why we keep getting some loose joints on these figures. Wish I could get this out of the way a little bit better. Maybe if I do that. Let's leave it like that. So for the hips, it's just your standard ball hinge, really. You have your swivel here, which, I mean, it's not like they're going to fall on their own if you put them all the way up, but if you go any lower than that, they are. So that's terrible. Now, she doesn't need to really be posed in any way other than standing. That's just not the way the character is, but that's still not good for an action figure. You should be able to pose it, and that doesn't work. You can bring the legs out pretty far, and that works nicely, so no problems there. It's an ugly joint, but it's hidden, so you don't have to worry about it. And then you get your swivel in there also. It's just weird the way they did it, and the way that it's so floppy. I don't understand that. It's functional in every way other than being floppy. And you do have your single jointed knee, which does work. It gives you about 90 degrees and it doesn't look too bad, so that's okay. For the ankle, you have a single hinge, ball hinge, very limited going forward and back, and you're basically going to have to not use the toe hinge if you ever want her to stand, because she has heels on, so it's going to be hard enough to pose her as is. You actually have to bring this down just a little bit, I've found, in order to give her a nice standing base. You can technically use an ankle rocker if you rotate that joint around, but it's going to be a little bit tricky given the engineering. So the hips are definitely a problem. Luckily, you're going to want to pose her probably just standing up and down anyway. Now, as far as this goes, this is technically articulated. It's on a little ball peg, which I also think could have been handled much better. Same thing with this piece. I don't really get why they did it this way, other than to allow for posability, but then you can't pose her anyway because of the hips, so it's not great. Those will move around, and this will just kind of tuck in, so it doesn't look terrible in most cases, but it doesn't look very good in most cases. It can look okay from the front, but this tends to stick out, which is obviously not right. You want that to go underneath. And then you have a lot of gapping over here, and I don't think it's supposed to be there. I think maybe there's supposed to be a slit in the side, but there's definitely not supposed to be this kind of big gap back here, so it's not great. It's definitely problematic. You can pose away most of it. As you can see, I kind of got it to close right there, but it's still a little iffy. So yeah, I don't know. It's good in a lot of ways, but this whole region right here, not so great, surprisingly. So could it be better? Definitely. Is it good enough to get? Probably. You're going to kind of have to make that call for yourself. I like it. I'm glad to add it to the collection, but it's not the best example of a variable action heroes figure. It's got some good aspects and some bad, so it's kind of a neutral buy. The rest is up to you. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have new videos up every single day. We talk about movies, TV shows, action figures, all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure you come back for that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.